Hello and welcome to the Tomb Raider movie spoiler cast. I'm Brian Altano. With me is Miranda Sanchez and Mark Medina.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you guys for coming. We watched Tomb Raider. The movie is out now. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. We'll wait. Wow, you saw it? Great. Awesome.
That was really fast.
Let's spoil the film. Again, we're going to get into all the sort of endgame territory here, the spoilers, people who die, people who live, how everything unfolds, whether we liked it or not. Let's just really have a long discussion here about Tomb Raider. Okay. So, all right. So, right off the bat, Miranda, you do have an official review on IGN.
Yes.
You did not love the film, so let's get that out of the way immediately.
5.5. So
Okay.
there are redeeming qualities to it, but not enough to make it a good movie.
Okay.
And so it's just, it exists. There's some things I like, but for the most part, did not like. And that's a really big shame because I think the 2013 Tomb Raider game, which a lot of this is based off of, was awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
seeing how they reduced so much of Lara's character and just kind of this world down into this somewhat boring movie. Like there's good scenes here and there, but generally the story that they're trying to tell just isn't captivating. And I just don't care about these characters.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Now, Mark, did you enjoy the film?
I think the biggest offense that this film, I think the one thing you can take away is the movie is called Tomb Raider. If it wasn't called Tomb Raider, nobody would care about it at all.
Right.
And it could have very easily not been called Tomb Raider. It
Yeah.
could have been Girl Goes into a Cave.
Girl Goes into a Cave. That is, yeah. I feel like a lot of people would see that movie.
Yeah,
That's a weird
it's just
movie.
like when I think about like something like Assassin's Creed, it's like at least there's a lot of elements there, like the animus and stuff.
Right.
Where this is just an adventure happened. This movie doesn't bring anything that it needs to be called Tomb Raider.
So you mentioned this not necessarily being a movie about tomb raiding specifically, but now I think the big question here, and especially for the IGN audience, huge Tomb Raider fans, I am too. Is this a good Tomb Raider movie for people who love the Tomb Raider video game? Like, is there enough in there to sort of satisfy you? It's a tough question to answer, right? Because I think you alluded to it for a second there, Miranda. Like, there's moments, there's glimpses.
Yeah, there's like things where I could see where they look at this game and like, oh, this is what was successful. Let's pull this in, like the plane scene and just like Lara learning to survive and making her first kill and kind of getting into what it means to be an adventurer and not just an archaeologist. But in this movie, Lara's not even an archaeologist. She doesn't even care about that. She gets zero craps.
Yeah, she gives zero crap.
But she can solve a puzzle.
Yes, she can solve puzzles. And it's weird because like a lot of this movie spends time telling you what she's good at and saying, this character says, oh, you're too smart for this. Or, oh, you're the brains of the family.
Right.
But it doesn't give her time to show those things in a really good way. The only time it really gives her is like, hey, she's very physically fit and can fight well.
Yeah, this is something we've struggled with our entire lives as video game fans and people who watch movies, is that it's almost impossible to make that conversation, sort of align perfectly. And I think one of the things I was thinking about during this movie is that it sacrificed, obviously, all the brutal, horrible death kills in 2013's Tomb Raider. You never saw her get speared in the face with a tree or get killed by rocks or anything like that. But in removing that element, which you find in video games, sort of like the repercussions of death, you're left with sort of these heroes that are infallible. And through that, they have to find character traits that you both like love and adapt and grow to. And I don't think that really happens here. So I will say this, like, the best thing to come from this film is not to toot our own horns, but what everyone's doing is this sort of like, here's the video game footage next to the live action footage next to each other. Because there are moments where those line up perfectly. And that's a really cool piece of content to sort of see, like, you did this amazingly, like if you had a cosplayer do that out in the wild, you'd be like, this is one of the most impressive pieces of content I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it is rather impressive how they're able to adapt some of those very gamey elements into this movie successfully. Like when she's climbing up walls or just like the way she's scaling across buildings, and it's very evocative of those moments that you had in the game. But the problem is the game's more than that. And because, we're condensing essentially like a 40-hour of whatever game into an hour-and-a-half movie, and that obviously gives you a lot of problems. And the way they tried to do that was ultimately not great. That's the problem.
One of my biggest takeaways from like the different, or like the question is like, will game people love the movie? And like the biggest difference is, as far as the story goes, is she says a line in the movie and the game, and the line is, "I'm just not that kind of Croft."
Right.
She says that in both the movie and the game. In the game, she says it because, she is an archaeologist and she's there for like figuring these things out, but she's not like overly physical. And so when Conrad tells her to climb the radio tower and says, "You'll have no problem doing it, you're a Croft," that's when she says, "I'm not that kind of Croft."
Right.
But then in the movie, she says it because she just doesn't want to own the company. Right. And it's like, it's funny.
Oh God,
it's
Croft
funny.
Holdings.
Yeah, it's funny how like different they insert the same line, but couldn't be for more different reasons.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so that said, I did enjoy, like, there's a scene where she infiltrates a base camp with a bow and arrow that she built herself, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like sort of alluding to how these moments happen. I think that it's kind of insane that they sort of feel like they need to do this with a lot of movies now, where they can't be like, "It's a Mary Sue. We'll show you exactly how she got her training. Here's her when she's 5 shooting a bow and arrow." And it's like, it's a little ham-fisted. But, there was a moment of that. But when I look at the Tomb Raider video games, which I really enjoy, especially the most recent ones, I think about, they're about tombs. They're about puzzles.
There's a couple tombs in there.
Yeah, there's a couple tombs. They're about like, fastening weapons out of stuff that you find in sort of your travels.
And like upgrading and all that stuff.
And they're not so much about the villains, which are not necessarily great. They're sort of there. And I think this movie, like, it didn't really deliver on like an awesome sort of like Lara tomb raiding. The puzzles weren't great. The action was close enough. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
But in general, I think it has to come down to the characters working. And in a video game, you get a free pass because you can go exploring for 100 hours and fighting bears. But in a movie, you have 90 minutes to really sell me on why these characters work and don't. And I don't really feel like they did.
Right.
So let's talk about the characters in this movie. First and foremost, obviously, Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft, who I think at first we were sort of like, I don't know, this doesn't really work. I think she did a really good job of sort of getting into that mode, right? Like that sort of running, like I just said, running through the camp, bow and arrow, killing everybody. She got completely ripped. Her abs were terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah, like she
There's
was.
a scene where you see her back and I'm just like putting the popcorn down.
Yeah.
It's just very impressive, like the physical feats that she accomplishes in this movie. And you can see some moments where she's trying to make Lara her own, but those are so few because she's so rarely left alone.
Right.
The one specifically that I call out my review is when she makes her first kill, kind of going back to that, and how that scene is so quick. Like obviously the action takes up most of it, and then she has only a few seconds to kind of like internalize murdering another person. And that's obviously a very big point in the game for Lara.
Yes.
For
and
sure.
then they managed to just barely make it a big point here because Alicia is a good actress.
Yes.
So it's like all on her to like sell that scene. And she does before she's just essentially just whisked off to go find her dad.
To go kill 100 more people.
Yeah. That was such a weird transition. Like she didn't get a second to breathe after that. It was just... There's a guy. Let me go chase after him, even though I just killed this one.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that like it's a trope that happens a lot in movies, horror movies especially, where like a main character's like girlfriend will die, and he's like, "Oh man, that sucks." Anyway, monster time. And it's like it kind of blows because you don't have enough time to really establish all of that. But here specifically, that is like beat for beat something from the video game. Like watching her internalize that in the video game is huge because we play so many video games, so many of them hinge on death, and so few of them take a moment to sort of go like, wait, what did I
just killed something.
Yeah, like pulling in that human aspect, right? It's not natural just to murder another person and letting her ruminate in that and like understand how that's impacting her and like what that means for her going forward is really important.
I also had a tough time understanding her character as somebody that was both rich and poor. She starts at the beginning of the movie as a bike messenger, just scrapping by. She can't pay her, personal trainer. We've all been there. When the rent's due and your personal trainer needs a couple $100 and you just can't pay him. But at the same time, like she's getting these calls from her maternal figure, Anna Miller, who's just sort of like, hey, I have $1 billion company here and like a massive mansion you can come hang out in. And she's like, no, I've got to go deliver these bike messagings.
Right. And that's like what's super weird is to bring up the game again. It's like Camilla Luddington, you kind of like, you believe that Lara Croft, like she's rich and stuff like that. But it's like, she's in it for, solving these myths and these mysteries. And you just buy every second of it, where that's what the main disconnect I had was like, she just didn't want to be rich. She never fully explains why. She just, I mean, it's mostly like, I didn't want to like sign over saying my father is dead. But it's like, you're literally, you can't afford to eat and stuff like that.
It's like if they made an Uncharted movie and he was like a pizza guy. And he's like, oh, it's got to make a living. And his wife's like, you have so much gold at home.
Right. And it was weird because even a character points out, it's like, hey, you're too smart to be doing this. Why are you doing this? And even in the game and kind of going back into the comics for Tomb Raider as well, like Lara does work several jobs, but she supports herself through university and she like makes it. But this Lara just doesn't have the motivation, I guess. Like, it's just really weird how they position her in this.
It's really odd. And I think that, like, towards the end of the film, she's established as somebody that sort of, like, understands what her father's gone through. She's now understands that she's capable of taking on anything that gets thrown at her. She becomes this sort of, like, badass, like, self-confident chick, which is really cool. But the road getting there is very wobbly, and I don't fully buy it. And so if you look at the last third of the movie, you're kind of like, she's confident and empowered, and she can go take on the world and an entire world of adventures now. But I don't know. Does she still go to the gym? Like, what happens to the bike messenger job? It's just weird. So this movie has two of my favorite TV actors of all time. One, Dominic West, who is from The Wire, and two, Walton Goggins, who is from Vice Principals and Sons of Anarchy and, God, so many other shows. And Justified, obviously, is the biggest one. But I don't think either of these characters specifically work. Now, Lord Richard Croft, played by Dominic West in this movie, is this sort of aloof father/father figure. They have this moment, this kissing thing they do with each other.
No.
Get used to seeing that.
And he's believed to be dead or gone. And then you find him in this sort of like Robinson Crusoe, crazy ass, like bearded.
He doesn't believe she's actually there.
7 years.
It's like he sees her and he's like, I always wake up after I see you. And you're like, all right, you're crazy.
And so he leaves her a VHS tape and tells her to destroy a pile of things right next to the VHS tape, which, spoilers, you could have just done yourself, dude. And then she finds it all and she goes on this adventure. And they have this relationship, which I think almost works at times. There's like moments where it's like there's something heartfelt here, and like, you know, him being like, I'm sorry I left you, but I had to go do this, and work is bigger than family, but you're here because you love me, and I couldn't work without my family, but now I'm going to die anyway. Like, it's how did you guys feel about all that?
I couldn't buy into it, especially for Lara's motive to go find him, because everything we know about him before actually meeting him is that he was always gone. I don't know what he did for Lara aside from give her money and an education.
They showed like 2 different flashback scenes where he's leaving, and I remember watching the second one, and I'm like, wait, I thought the first one was when he was like leaving, and now he's leaving again. I was like, where? And then then I kind of pieced together, oh, so he just leaves a lot.
Isn't there? He's an absent father. And then the second part is that he's lied about a major part of his life.
Yeah.
So the archaeology thing, he's never exposed that to anybody. This is like a secret layer of like, I'm actually an archaeologist, surprise. I'm investigating weird supernatural things that I can't tell anybody about. Now that you know, because I'm dead, please destroy it.
It's like your dad was having an affair with adventure.
It just isn't a good theme for the story. I just had a hard time buying for it, especially because they essentially used that to trade in what made Lara interesting. Because like trading this bad relationship for an interesting Lara, and that sucks.
Well, and you kind of buy it in the games that it's like, oh, Lara became an archaeologist because that's what her father was. So then you just completely makes sense, but then she's still like really good at puzzles and really interested in this stuff.
Yeah, well, her guardian, Conrad Roth, was like the guy who taught her how to be a survivalist.
So that's where it makes sense. It's like to kind of follow in her dad's footsteps, but in the movie, there's literally no explanation for her to know anything that she knows about puzzles.
Yeah, she went to school at some point in time, so she's naturally smart, is what we know. I don't have a problem believing why she's smart. I have a problem just that they made Lara a lesser character to focus on her relationship on her father. And ultimately that's what it becomes. It becomes about their relationship and not about her love of archaeology or adventure or tombs. So that's ultimately what's really disappointing about it. And then we have
Walton Goggins playing Matthias, whatever it is, who is sort of the other just aloof, brutish man in this movie.
Yeah.
She's sort of got these like twin characters on each side of her that are just like they're equally flawed. I think that his character, I think, started as a good idea of sort of let's get this kind of psychopathic, malicious guy. We'll give him a little bit of backstory that he doesn't have any family to talk to because he's sort of like trapped on this island.
Well, he has 2 daughters he's missing.
Yeah.
And he wants to get home so he can go see his daughters.
Yeah.
Right.
And he keeps saying that I have no one to talk to on an island full of people that they've enslaved and some other people they have hired to work for them.
One of the weirdest transitions in any film I've ever seen is a guy being like, I haven't talked to anybody in 7 years. Cut to open door, hundreds of people.
I think the whole idea was
Go be life of the party, man. Like, get out
I think
there.
what they were trying to say is like, not that he hasn't talked to anybody. I think it meant like on his level of intelligence or power. I don't think it was like literally I haven't talked to anybody.
But
I
he
think
says
it's
that
like
multiple times, and it's so dumb. Like that's the reason he has essentially gone crazy is because he can't get home and he has no one to talk to.
Right.
I think it's just a bad line. I think that's not what they meant, and it's just really weird.
He's probably the worst character.
Yeah.
Well, I watched this movie within like a week of the movie I, Tonya, which takes a horribly flawed woman and humanizes her based on her awful upbringing that her mother did to her. And in this movie, they're just sort of just like, well, yeah, he had some bad stuff happen to him.
Yeah.
He's going to kill a bunch of people
Yeah.
point blank. He's going to be just a slasher.
He kills
movie
like an
villain
old
about
guy,
it.
yeah.
And I don't really feel bad that he doesn't see his
and
daughters.
the
It's
only-
good. You shouldn't see anybody.
The only threatening thing about him is the fact that he has a gun.
Right.
Like himself is not actually scary at all. He looks like a carpenter. Like,
And this character is killed because Lara Croft takes a dime bag that has a mummy's finger in it that looks like a cat turd, shoves it down his throat, chokes him, and he falls in a hole.
Yeah.
Which, okay, that's how you finish a Saints Row game that went like,
Right.
I don't know, straight to PSP. But that's not how you finish a movie. So like that's the end of this villain. It's like, that's it.
Yep,
He's done.
He's dead.
Why did she throw down her axe or her pickaxe?
I don't know.
And she went in that
Why did
fight, she
what?
threw it down, ran in. I was like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? You had a weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we've got some other characters who they are as long as
So-
the sentence I have written here. Daniel Wu is Lu Ren.
I didn't even write about him in my review because he was so inconsequential.
Right, and that dude's like a badass actor. And
Yeah.
he was given nothing to chew on in this movie.
It
I
feels
thought I
bad
was
'cause-
gonna like him when she first met him. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, he was like
Yeah.
this like drunk guy, and you're like, okay. But then when they're like actually
I'll
on
be
the
in your
boat,
movie.
right? That's how they found him. And then when he's like on the boat, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of into it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, then he just wasn't in the movie the whole time.
So that's the thing is like they give him
like the
his
liberator.
development in the very beginning when we
Yep.
find him.
Yep.
And then that's it. And then he just serves as a tool to help Lara escape.
Well, they say specifically like, well, we can't go to this island with a helicopter because of the mummy's curse, so we have to take a boat, and the boat gets destroyed, and then the movie ends, and they're like, let's get in the helicopter.
I feel like he's like
What?
a tool to speak to the people. Like it's just kind of like, hey, like I'm,
That's such a big problem. It's
you
like,
know, like
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
some
I'm
little
here
good
to
actors
I'm
in
here
all
to
the
wrangle
scenes.
you guys all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While Lara's off in a hole in a wall.
Yeah,
doing
he was the
whatever.
indentured servant
Yeah.
stalker, basically.
Yeah,
Like,
I
that
got
was
a
it.
big gun.
Interpreter.
Follow me,
Yeah.
kind of.
and then like it's weird because him and Matthias are also using these weird parallels to Lara and her father. It's
Yep.
like, well, sorry, Lu Ren, you don't get to see your father because he's dead, but I get to see mine.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, it's like you're dead for a good cause. Sorry.
Yeah.
Also,
Sometimes it's like, I think people think that adding stuff like that into a script makes it better, and it actually doesn't. So I would okay, and then there's Kristen Scott Thomas who played Anna Miller. There's literally nothing to say about this woman.
For 2 minutes.
She was in this movie for 2 minutes. She got
Yeah.
in an elevator, out of an elevator. The entire thing she wanted to do in this movie was try to get Lara Croft to sign paperwork, which is
Yep.
like, all right,
then
my
she
favorite.
did.
And
favorite part of Tomb Raider.
She
And
literally
she did.
She literally did the signed paperwork, and then Laura's like looking through it, and she's like, she sees Trinity, and then looks up, and
The
Anna's
sirens
in the,
going from like Kill Bill.
Yeah, and
and
so
then Anna's in the elevator and just like turns around at the last moment as the elevators close.
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
entire theater groaned.
and it was like they might have just had a hand punching another hand that said, "Get it? Do you get it? She's
Right,
bad.
right.
She's in control. Do you get it?" And it was just like, okay.
It's like there might as well have been arrows. I sat next to Miranda and Chastity from GameSpot, and they're just like, I'm like trying to get into it, and they're just laughing.
Yeah, it was.
Like it wasn't
that.
like just some of these moments, especially when the bad guy Matthias was just like, open the door. And the father's just like, "Do it, Lara."
So I wanted
just
to
like laughing, and I'm like,
so poorly done.
I want to talk about that.
I feel really bad.
Yeah,
but
no, you
it
don't
was
feel
done
bad.
so poorly that I was just laughing. It's just,
You
It was
should.
a stressful moment, and it's just silly.
That's okay. That's totally okay. Like I this is
not what I wanted for Tomb Raider.
No, well, this is not like a heartwarming story based on a real life tragedy.
Right.
This is a video game movie. So I think it's okay to laugh at it a little bit. I think it gets a little ridiculous. So specifically, I think one of the main characters in this movie that we didn't talk about is the Tomb. The Tomb is a great character in Tomb Raider games.
Yumiko.
Yeah, in this game, or in this movie, sort of. Like I think
they gave her a modern twist that I like didn't super hate. Like I see they didn't want to go like super supernatural.
Yeah.
Which was she controlled the weather and stuff.
I
but
missed that,
she's
though.
still like, they made that decision to just basically she has a plague that she then puts on to people.
Right, so she's the carrier of a virus.
Yeah.
And she essentially went to Yamatai to go steal herself away so she wouldn't infect anybody.
Right.
And so kind of casting her in this modern role is interesting because Himiko in the game is obviously just a straight up villain.
Yeah.
Like she just sacrifices people and she's trying to they're going through all these different women to see who can carry her
she
soul.
skeleton keys them. She just keeps going into their body.
Right.
Yeah, and
Skeleton key.
and so I think both of those are interesting ways to present them.
Yes. Yeah.
But the virus was weird.
Yeah, it's just weird.
It looked weird.
I just kind of wanted them to push more into the supernatural because I think that makes Tomb Raider fun.
I'm with you. I think it's a very thin line to walk. You either don't do it at all, and you make the entire movie about sort of like an artifact inside of a tomb. There was a moment there where people were like, there was a bunch of like kind of Jason Momoa looking video game henchmen in that movie that just died left and right, which I love seeing. That's what I go to see these dumb movies for.
Yep.
Just a bunch of nameless, brawny men who work out all the time, just getting killed for no reason. A+. But they were walking into the tombs. They were stepping on stuff. Hatchets and crap was just getting wrecked. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is how you take a team of 10 people and you whittle it down to one, which is just Lara Croft, and you make her fight Walton Goggins, which they kind of did. But Lara didn't get enough time in this tomb by herself.
Yeah.
The only real puzzle in the movie, there was the one in the front door, which they opened in like 2 seconds.
Which they didn't even really fully explain. Like,
she's like,
I don't know.
I remember this.
I mean, it was a riddle, and then she pressed.
They didn't explain like what the riddle was or how she solved it. It's just like beauty shots of her climbing all over this wall.
Oh,
and then
okay.
she
So different doors.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about the tomb or her father's tomb.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the light one. The light one.
So there's
that one
okay.
makes sense.
There's
The
three
first one,
doors.
There
are 3 doors.
How many doors are in this movie?
So there's the door
talk about the
to
doors.
the secret archaeology hideout.
Yeah.
Then which is its own puzzle.
Right.
And then there's
That one was
the
fine.
puzzle to the actual tomb, which they kind of just said, look at this notebook. Now look at this wall. Now she's gonna solve
the first door, because we're talking about the one with
That's pretty much it.
the pushing the name or whatever, pushing the R, whatever.
Yeah.
Super national treasure. So I appreciated it.
Yeah. There was and then there's obviously the one where there's 5 people screaming, the floor is falling apart. They're all standing on nothing. And they're like, jam every color into the hole until it's solved. Like a bad video game puzzle.
And then all of a sudden it's just like,
then it's
life.
green.
Yeah.
It's green.
And then you get a couple of scenes where Lara Croft is running through these tunnels and these things are swinging down and she's jumping over them. I'm like, yeah, that's Tomb Raider. You did
More
it.
of that. Yeah.
More of that.
I would have loved to have just more time with the smaller tomb, right?
Yeah.
Because you get these really awesome puzzles from those, and they don't have to take a lot of time, but that would be just a great time to showcase Alicia as Lara and give Lara some character to kind of learn hey, maybe she likes archaeology. Hey, maybe she is interested in this whole thing and not just in it to, I guess, save her father, then I guess take over the family business of fighting off Trinity, which is kind of like her attitude toward the end.
Yeah, and no, totally. And I think it's you have all the ingredients there. You have this awesome island. You have this tomb. You have Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft. It's all there. She's got the hatchet and everything. And they just don't really give her much to work with, and then the film kind of ends. So the movie leaves on sort of a goodbye, that's it, but also here's a veritable treasure chest of opportunities for sequels. Obviously, the box office will decide that, and so will Rotten Tomatoes. And I don't think either of them will be too kind to this film, which means that if we do see a sequel, which we probably will, it'll be direct to Crackle, and it'll be starring somebody completely different. Do you guys think we'll see sequels to this movie? Do you want sequels to this movie?
I think it mostly depends on box office.
Yeah.
And everyone that I've talked to is just kind of I know that the three of us that have seen it, people at this point in time, people have seen your review. So people in the office have seen your review. And they're just, most people have said like, yeah, I'll probably still go watch it.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like Assassin's Creed. I had no interest in that movie at all, but because I love Assassin's Creed, I still went and watched it. And that was the same thing with this movie. Like, I'm gonna go watch it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's sort of, and your review score hits on that, but I think it's just sort of okay, and that's a weird thing to do. Like, it's not great, but it's not terrible.
Right. Like, even though we harped on a lot of things that were disappointing, I think we come at that because we're interpreting it from the video game angle.
Yes.
And just this as a movie as on its own, yeah, it's just okay.
It's just okay.
With no regard to what happens with the video game.
I think
Well,
when
you gave it a mediocre, right?
Yeah, so
which
5.5.
is
So like just
totally
solid.
totally fair.
yeah.
It is a movie that
exists.
happened.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
like if
The
you're
worst thing
It's
ever.
not going to change your life.
Yeah,
Right.
if you're on an airplane and you're bored, watch it. If it's on Netflix one Sunday afternoon and it's auto playing and you can't reach the remote because you're sitting
What
on
if you have movie
like-
if you have Movie Pass and an
Yeah.
afternoon free,
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
go watch
And
some
I'm
action.
really curious to see what the feedback on this is from people who don't know Tomb Raider as a video game series
Yes.
and who didn't play the new reboot.
Yeah, I mean that you're really right because these have to work both ways, and I don't know if people will watch this movie and then immediately go like, I got to play that video game. So I mean, this
Way better.
yeah, a lot of these things are sort of in the Assassin's Creed movie way. I wouldn't necessarily run and go play that game for the first time after seeing that movie. So
Right.
who knows? I mean, these are massive brand associations and deals that all have to come together.
Yeah.
If we did see a Tomb Raider 2, would you want it to keep its like more grounded like style that it has right now, or would you want them to just go off the rails and just do the supernatural stuff that the game has?
They need to go off the rails because if they're
Yeah.
going to focus this on Lara essentially just going out there to stop Trinity and not because she cares about tomb raiding at all, then you need to kind of force more cool action sequences. And I think the way to kind of make that better is going to be with supernatural things.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So that way she doesn't have to buy in so much into the archaeology side of it.
Well, it's like
Go-
Mad
go
Max
f-
Fury
go-
Road like kind of proved that like a not great story can still make an incredible movie.
Sure, yeah, it's
So it's
kind
just
of a
like-
straight line, right?
You know, like
I mean, not every story needs to be super complex to be great.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I think if they were to do a sequel, they could do it much better than this one, especially now that her father's dead. That's great. He should have been dead with to begin with. Like,
I agree.
I think he's
he had to
better
be
off
the
dead.
hero.
If you're gonna make a sort of like hokey, fun, campy action movie, then just go full Underworld or whatever, and just have her going into these tombs and killing henchmen and crafting weapons and collecting treasures and just make it fun, make it interesting.
Yeah.
So that's what we thought of Tomb Raider, the brand new movie out now. Let us know what you thought. Leave a comment below if there's something we missed. Maybe you liked it better than us. Maybe you liked it worse than us. Just tell us about it. We'll read it. That's not the only Tomb Raider thing we've done. We've done tons of coverage for this movie, just tons and tons of it. Miranda has an official review which you should read because it gets a lot more in depth about what works and doesn't work than our insane ramblings here, which we had a good time with.
Much rambling.
We also have a piece about WTF questions, which stands for what the fart. Because I can't say the F word here, even though this movie is full of people who get killed. It's weird. America. In case you're wondering what the hell happened in that movie, there's a lot of weird stuff. Like the helicopter thing. What? Why? And why is everyone in Thailand dirty? That's a weird movie. Also, I did a piece explaining the ending. In case you had questions about that, we'll break it down for you. And we also have an interview with Alicia Vikander. She talked about getting in a character for that movie and also why there are no snakes in that film, as well as Easter eggs. I think that's everything.
We also have a differences feature.
there we go.
Differences
We have
the
an anti-Easter egg.
Yeah.
Everything that the Easter eggs didn't cover, this is here.
biggest differences between the video game and the movie.
Yes, and then watch our videos where we put the footage from the movie and the video game next to each other. Because, like I said, I think that's the best thing to come from this film.
It
Yep.
happens a lot.
Thank you so much for watching. For all things Tomb Raider, you're already in the right place. IGN.